Do you need an expensive vehicle to be successful in real estate? There's a debate raging on right now discussing the exact same thing. Is this true? Or is this just a ploy started by big luxury and reality television to try and get you to buy a more expensive vehicle? Well, we're gonna get into that and more in this video. Stay tuned. Well, let's start with what everyone's really wondering. It's about status. Now, do people perceive you with what car you drive? Well, they kind of do. I'm a big car guy, I'll admit. So I definitely do judge people on their decisions on what car they make. But that's not necessarily all of it. This does not mean you need to go out and buy a really expensive BMW and you're 22 years old and you just got your real estate license because you feel like that's what you gotta do. That's not true at all. You can do perfectly fine with just like a nice vehicle. Doesn't have to be like over the top nice, doesn't need to be a luxury brand. And as long as you are presenting yourself well, you're dressing the part, you want to take a look at kind of what's average in your area based on your clientele. What kind of vehicles do they drive? Then just a little bit nicer than that is just fine. Don't need to go overboard. You don't need to go buy a brand new car and think that that's gonna make the difference. There's a lot better uses of where to spend your money in real estate rather than your car. Because if people can't find you online for your services, well then you're never even get the chance to drive up in that new BMW. So keep that in mind when you're looking for your next car purchase. A Lambo is pretty nice and it makes for a really great Instagram. Now, is it worth the $300,000 to $500,000 that you'd spend on the Lambo? If you can afford it, by all means, do it. Now, if you're just like barely making payments on the thing, then definitely you do not need that Lamborghini. And also for real estate, well, how are you going to take your clients around if they're a couple? Good luck trying to fit them both in there. I think a nice Malibu or Impala or something would do just fine. You can also go overboard on what vehicle you buy, even if you can afford it. I do know there's this realtor in a very small market and no one drives Lamborghinis, Ferraris, really anything over $80,000 unless it's a loaded out truck. And he bought a loaded out like BMW 7 Series. It's about a $160,000 car. He must have thought that that might have given him more status. Well, in his market, that's quite the opposite. The people will judge him for having too nice of a vehicle. Now, also, I'll give you a little backstory on me and real world use cases on this. I've actually tried this out. Now, I wasn't in real estate, but I was in a very similar industry in residential renovations. So meeting with homeowners, driving up to their house, very similar. One year, I had a really nice Cadillac. It was loaded out. It's probably like a $70,000 vehicle. And I used that 1 year and saw kind of what people's perception and kind of what they felt about it. Well, my sales were pretty good in that year. And I didn't really get a lot of negative comments about it, thinking that I was like charging too much. That it was all just going to my vehicles and I must be overcharging if, I have that nice of vehicle. I did get some comments like, hey, that's a pretty nice car and stuff, but it was just kind of right at that level where it wasn't too much. And then the next year, I drove about a 12-year-old Dodge pickup truck. Now I had it like my logos on it and I had it cleaned up nice and, kept it always nice and waxed. So it looked pretty decent vehicle, but it was older. Well, my sales were just about as good in that year, very comparable, and it made no difference between a $70,000 Cadillac and the old Dodge truck. So keep that in mind. Now, people will judge you if you have a nice vehicle, like a luxury brand, like Cadillac, BMW, Mercedes, Range Rover, all those, and you do not keep it nice. You show up to your place and your car is just a mess. You don't have the inside clean. Your exterior hasn't been washed in a couple weeks or worse, a couple months. You've got damage to the body of the vehicle. You're missing a headlight. You've got a cracked windshield. All of these things, it doesn't matter what badge there is, but it's telling the consumer that you cannot even take care of your own car. So why would they trust you to take care of one of the biggest purchases of their life? So even if your car is 10 years old, you keep it well maintained, you keep it waxed, you keep it in good condition, you keep it clean, that's the difference maker. So that's the part about status. So now let's go into the next point. Next, and just as important, if not more important, you need to look at how much can you actually afford. Now, are you gonna go in debt for this car and you're a new realtor and you're just going to go ahead and sign a loan for $2,000 a month on this, well, check at how much you think that will give you. Do you think that's going to give you a couple $1,000s every single month in business with having that rather than your used Chevy Malibu? Probably not. The difference is if you are in a luxury market and you're selling luxury, then maybe it might be worth it to maybe upgrade to a luxury brand if you can afford it. Now, don't just buy it and do your numbers and thinking that this is going to give you more business, because that's not how this works. And I know I've been kind of guilty of this before, but mainly I just want a nice vehicle. And so it kind of like justify it a little bit, but I could afford it. So if you're changing your numbers for future business based on the car you have, make sure you go out there already and prove yourself that you can make that income to support that purchase. So best thing to do is probably just, what you can pay with cash. Close 3 deals and they're 3 nice deals, you can get, $50,000. Well, $50,000 can buy you a nice pre-owned vehicle. And also with these luxury brands, there's several more things that you need to consider before purchasing one of them. And it's more than just your purchase price. Now go through your numbers in your business, and you should know these very well. What percentage you're spending on your vehicles, your marketing, all the different expenses that go into your real estate business or just any business in general. And if you're spending 3% on your vehicle expenses right now, well, then you're gonna have to increase that top line number so much more to keep that at 3% or 5%, whatever it is. It should be kind of in the lower area for your vehicle expense. So if it's going at 50%, then you're way over and that you just can't afford it. Get your revenue up first, get your income up, and then look at purchasing that more expensive vehicle. I know this is hard, especially for a car guy like me, because I like nice vehicles. So it's always a good check that rather than like, oh, I think I need this, then you're kind of looking at an emotional decision where you need to break it down and make the decision with numbers and logic, because everyone likes a new car, myself included. Next, you need to look at where's your market. Are you selling condos in the city all the time? Are you doing land deals up in the mountains or out in the country? This is very important on what car you drive, because if you are in an area, maybe you're in a very small community and just a lot of farmland around, well, you definitely don't want to be driving a Lamborghini or a little front wheel drive car. You're probably going to need something that has 4-wheel drive and has some off-road capabilities to get you to the land that you need to see. Now, if you're in the city, maybe you don't want a big truck, because try parallel parking it. Well, you can have a lot of spots that are no longer available for you because your vehicle's too long to park. Also, so like for example, for me, I have a GMC Sierra Denali. It works out pretty well for me because I do business in downtown Denver, and I also do land deals up in the mountains. So a lot of times I need that 4-wheel drive capability. There could be a ton of snow. I need the ground clearance to get to some land. And then also in the city, parallel parking and stuff isn't that big of a deal for me because it's got the cameras and everything else on it. So sometimes it does get a little tight, but it's just a 1/2-ton truck, so it's not that big of a deal. And also it's a Denali, so it's not like I'm driving in some old beat up pickup truck. So for me, that car works pretty well. Now, if I only worked in a city, maybe I'd have the Cadillac CT6, where it has the Super Cruise that drives itself. It's got the adaptive cruise control, so it does automatic braking. So driving a lot of traffic and stuff, that would be my car to pick. But with going up in the mountains, that changes it a bit. So really, you just have to pay attention to kind of where you are and what's your market, and also the next point, what's your target market? Now, what's your target market? Now, are you going after luxury buyers? You're going to $5 million homes plus, or are you going after new home buyers? That's going to make a huge difference on what vehicle fits right for you. Now, if you pull up and you just bought a $100,000 vehicle and you just deal with new home buyers, they're not necessarily gonna think much of it. You might get some compliments like, oh yeah, that's pretty nice and stuff, but they're not really gonna respect you. They're gonna think you're kind of a show off and kind of cocky if you're driving something that extravagant compared to them and their Toyota Camry. So you could buy something just like a little bit nicer than what they have is fine. So if your target market is typically driving a couple-year-old Toyota Camry and you buy a couple-year-old Lexus, just a little badge and some upgrades difference, then that's perfectly fine. And I would say that that's the level that you kind of want to be at. You know, if everyone's driving GMC Sierras in your target market, buy a Denali. That's fine. Just keep it in the same kind of car, just an upgraded trim is fine. Just don't go overboard with the brands. Now, if you're selling luxury, if you're trying to sell it to clientele who's going to be purchasing $5 to $10 million homes, well, they judge you very much so, because they typically have had to work at a certain level to achieve that status and to achieve what they have. So if you're driving in like a 1990 beat up old Honda Civic and you show up trying to sell to them, they're probably going to immediately just say no thank you, because you haven't achieved that level that they're looking for. Why would they choose you with that beat up old Honda Civic and you're not putting any money into your vehicle purchase, or worst case, you can't even afford a nicer vehicle? Then that shows to them, right or wrong, that you don't have what it takes to be their agent that they're looking for. They want someone at least on their level, or that they can see are working to achieve at their level. So yes, it is very important in this case, depending on who's your target market and who you're selling to and the vehicles that are common around in your area. Now, does size matter? Well, yeah, it does. No matter what your wife or girlfriend has told you. Do you have a big enough back seat to take clients around? Maybe it's not common in your area. Yes, it has gotten less and less common, so maybe that might not be that big of a deal to not have a big back seat to like take around a married couple or a couple buying a house that someone needs to be sitting in the back seat. So if you do that a lot and have clientele that do want to ride in your car, well, make sure you buy at least a full-size sedan, at least a mid-size to large SUV, or a full-size crew cab truck, because nothing's worse than having to sit cramped while you're looking at houses. If someone's uncomfortable, then they're not in the buying mood. So what I like about driving a truck is that I've got really big back seat. It sits up high. When they're driving through neighborhoods and they want to look around at the neighborhood, they can see over the cars parked on the side of the road. It's just a really nice car to take people around, and it's got the Magna-Ride shocks, so it's also a fairly smooth truck too, and so it's kind of the best of both worlds. And also, you kind of want to consider, do you need room for your signs? Like your open house signs, like the big pull for your for sale sign. Was that going to fit in your Toyota Yaris? Maybe. I don't know. You got to, really pay attention to that. So also, we kind of got into this a little bit earlier, is, do you need off-road capabilities? Do you actually need a lifted vehicle for the market that you serve? In your market, are you constantly just driving long distances on the highway? Well, maybe you don't want a huge vehicle, really sucks on gas, which I'll go into the next point now on indirect costs. Now, next thing to consider is the indirect costs. Yes, sometimes when you're looking at a new vehicle, you just think like, hey, I can afford this. This is the payment. Well, you're in real estate, you should know better. There's a lot of other things that are involved in a purchase of another vehicle. You have insurance, taxes, fuel, maintenance, depreciation, and insurance. All are things to consider when you buy a new vehicle. Now, taxes. You're like, well, what does that really matter? Yeah, there's sales tax and stuff. Now, there is a section in the tax code where you can buy, I think, 6,000 pound vehicle or more. And I think this might be GVWR on that one. So I'm not an accountant, or financial advisor, so check with them first. I'll just give you kind of a brief overview of what it is, where you can depreciate that a lot quicker, your income. So if you have like a banger year and you don't want to pay taxes on all that, then that's a solution that a lot of people use to get their taxes down. So maybe you might want to buy that G-Wagon, that Escalade, and get your taxes down. So, all the other factors don't matter as much because you just made a ton of money and you just want to get your taxes down. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing to consider is fuel costs. All right, so like my Sierra, great vehicle for a lot of the reasons mentioned previously. Now in the city and most of my driving in Denver, I get 10 to 11 miles per gallon. Well, it also is recommended for premium as well. So right now, that's close to $6 a gallon. So I'm spending close to, I don't know exactly what it is, but I think it's like 50 to 60 cents every single mile. Now, if you drive a ton and you drive like 20,000 miles a year, you can see how big an expense that will be every single year to have a big vehicle like that. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. The other thing is maintenance. The thing with these luxury brands is they are very expensive to maintain. Something goes out and you have a Toyota Camry, it might cost $200 to fix. Well, If you got a Porsche, it could be $2,000 to $5,000. And some luxury brands, like their oil changes are literally like thousands of dollars to get done. We're talking like Lambos and stuff, but you get the point. And especially if you're just barely making payments on that vehicle, and you have something even as simple like a brake, needs a brake job, and it's gonna cost you several $1,000s to get that, well, you are car poor. So definitely keep that in mind. And here's one thing that people don't consider hardly ever when it comes to luxury brands is the depreciation. So I bought a brand new Cadillac CT6. It was close to $90,000. That cost me $1 every single mile I drove that car in just depreciation. Luxury brands depreciate very quickly. So if you are looking at a luxury brand, there's a lot of people who sell their cars after just a couple of years. You could buy like right now a 2018, 2017, 2019 car, you know, Mercedes or whatever else, that's just slightly used, has like less than 30,000 miles on it, and you can maybe be paying half the price of a brand new one. Still looks like a brand new car to everyone else, unless they're, you know, really into that brand or, you know, really into cars. So definitely consider that when you're gonna buy a brand new luxury vehicle. And for a business car that you're doing a daily driver, my advice would be never to buy a brand new vehicle, even if you can afford it, for a luxury brand that you're going to use for business. Now for your weekend driver, whatever, fine, just do whatever you want with your money. You know, with that depreciation and stuff, that's just more houses you're gonna have to sell to make the same exact income. And you know what, after a month, they're both gonna feel exactly the same to you. After that new smell wears off, it's gonna be a very similar vehicle. And the other thing to consider is insurance. Obviously, the more expensive the vehicle, the higher the insurance. Especially if it's a very hot car with thieves in your area, then you can expect that insurance to be way up. So, you know, consider that, because the car might be depreciating, but what we've seen a lot, especially in my area and with luxury brands, that insurance keeps on going up as that car's value going down because it's a desirable vehicle to thieves. So that's another point to keep in mind. Well, I hope that helps you if you're trying to decide whether you need to buy a new car in real estate. Bottom line is, if you're a new agent and you've got a decent, dependable car, don't spend it on a new vehicle or even a used vehicle. Use what you got until you have the money to afford that. Now take a look at those 6 things before you go purchase another vehicle for real estate. Well, I'm James Hund with eXp Realty. Please do me a favor and like this video. It will help me out a lot. Show some love to the subscribe button, and I'll keep on working on my content for you. And then also hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date on all the different realtor tips and tricks. Also, do me a favor, drop in the comments below. Do you think what you drive in real estate is important? Let's discuss it. Come on, you keyboard warriors, get typing. And if you have any more questions about what car you should drive for real estate and you're still confused, please reach out to me. I'm James Hund. You can find my contact information. I'd be more than happy to talk cars with you because I love talking cars. Also, if you have more questions about my group and the free training that we provide and would like to know more about that, please also reach out. Well, that's all for me today. So go forth, don't go buy a new vehicle unless you can afford it, and take care.